There comes a moment in life when a person quietly admits something they've avoided for years. I'm doing everything right, yet nothing really changes. And it's in that silent confession, that mix of frustration and fragile hope, that the truth behind Neville Goddard's teachings hits with surprising force. Because what shapes reality isn't effort, luck, or timing. It's the state a person lives from, even when they don't realize they're living from it. What if the financial struggle you think is bad luck is actually just the echo of a state you forgot you assumed long ago? What if the love you're chasing keeps slipping away because you're unknowingly reacting from a state that says, I'm not chosen? What if the world isn't ignoring you, but simply obeying the very command your inner state is giving it? Most people are trying to fix life from the outside, working harder, praying louder, hustling more, while completely missing the mechanism that actually turns desire into reality. The paradox is shocking. The more you try to change the world without changing states, the more the world repeats itself. And the more you shift your inner state first, the more the world quietly rearranges itself as if it had always been waiting for your signal. This video is for the person who is tired of pushing, tired of forcing, tired of feeling like life only moves when they exhaust themselves. Neville Goddard revealed a simpler path, almost unfairly simple, where imagination creates reality, where feeling it real becomes the gateway, and where the state creates while the world only obeys. If you've ever felt that life was happening to you, prepare yourself, because what you're about to discover will show you that life was actually happening through you, responding, reflecting, and mirroring the inner state you've been carrying all along. He always thought life was a series of coincidences, good days, bad days, luck, timing. But the more he paid attention, the more he noticed a pattern. The world kept reflecting the same emotional climate he carried inside. It was almost unsettling, like reality was mirroring him with perfect precision. Neville Goddard would say this happens because imagination creates reality, even when someone is unaware of it. And once he understood that the state creates, everything around him suddenly made sense. He remembered a phase of his life when he constantly feared losing money, and strangely, unexpected expenses kept appearing. Not because life was cruel, but because he was unknowingly living from a state of scarcity. The world obeys your state, Neville taught, even when the state feels invisible. It was the law of assumption explained not as theory, but as daily life happening right in front of him. He later realized the echo he saw was simply the world reflecting what he assumed to be true. People say, it's just reality. But he began seeing that reality was repeating whatever state he had accepted. If he felt overlooked, situations appeared that made him feel unnoticed. If he felt important, doors opened without effort. It wasn't magic. It was the quiet logic behind the law of assumption. Life wasn't deciding his fate. It was following his inner script. He thought about how many people chase external solutions without ever shifting their inner position. They try new jobs, new relationships, new strategies, but carry the same state everywhere they go. So the story never changes, only the characters do. Neville Goddard would call this living the same assumption in different costumes. The echo remains the same until the inner state changes. One day, he tested this consciously. Instead of waking up worried, he woke up choosing calm certainty. He didn't know how things would work out. He simply chose the feeling of I'm supported. And strangely, the day unfolded with ease, as if life had been waiting for him to shift his state. That was the first time he truly felt the wish-fulfilled Neville method in action. It became obvious that nothing in life was random when he noticed how people responded differently to him. On days he felt confident, others treated him like someone capable and valuable. On days he felt small, the world seemed to agree. The world only obeys the state he carried, nothing more, nothing less. Feeling it real, Neville would say, was the true signal reality listened to. He learned to observe his emotional reactions not as flaws, but as indicators. They showed him exactly which state he was occupying in that moment. If irritation appeared, it meant he was in a state of pressure. If gratitude flowed easily, he was aligned with abundance. Every reaction became a clue to the inner world that imagination had already created. And once he accepted this, responsibility became power. He no longer blamed luck, people, or timing for what he experienced. Instead, he turned inward and asked, what state am I living from right now? This single question transformed his entire relationship with life. Shift your state, manifestation follows. It was that simple. He often laughed at how obvious things felt once he saw them clearly. All those years he thought life was random, when reality was actually predictable. Predictable not by logic or strategy, but by the emotional state behind everything. Once he grasped that, he stopped wrestling with the world. He started choosing who he was being first, and watching life respond second. Now he looks at every situation, even challenging ones, as reflections rather than obstacles. He knows the old state still echoes for a while, like sound fading in a canyon. But the moment he shifts inward, the outer world begins rearranging itself in obedience. It always does. It can't help but follow. And with that awareness, he naturally moves into the next question. If the world is only echoing me, then what does that mean for the states I choose next? He used to believe life responded to effort, strategy, and timing, until Neville Goddard showed him a deeper mechanism. The state came first, always first, and everything else was simply a reflection of it. Once a state was assumed, the world obeyed your state, Neville would insist, like a servant carrying out a silent command. This wasn't philosophical. It was practical, observable, testable. The state creates and reality follows without hesitation. He noticed this most clearly when he assumed a state of being chosen. He didn't try harder, look different, or change his behavior. He simply accepted the inner conviction. Suddenly, people invited him into conversations. Opportunities appeared and doors opened effortlessly. It was the law of assumption explained through daily life, not through theory. He understood then that assumption wasn't pretending, it was identity. There was a time when he tried to manifest from desperation, thinking action alone could save him. But the more desperate he felt, the more the world reflected the same energy. Neville's words echoed in his mind. Imagination creates reality, not effort rooted in fear. Once he shifted his state to calm confidence, results began flowing with ease. It was the wish-fulfilled Neville method working exactly as promised. He learned that a state is not a mood, it's a position of consciousness. Two people can do the same action, but get completely different results based on the state they're acting from. He saw this when a friend tried to start a business from anxiety, while he acted from abundance. His path unfolded smoothly, while the friend faced endless resistance. This contrast showed him how the state creates, long before any action does. Sometimes he would test this in simple ways, like assuming he'd have a peaceful day. No visualizations, no rituals, just a quiet acceptance. And every time, the world rearranged itself to reflect that inner decision. Traffic seemed lighter, people kinder, moments smoother. It almost felt unfair, like reality was conspiring on his behalf. Neville Goddard often said that a person cannot occupy two states simultaneously. He realized this when he tried to hold faith and fear at the same time, and saw chaos unfold. Only when he fully surrendered to one state did life stabilize. It taught him that partial assumption leads to partial results. But full assumption, that's when the world moves with power and clarity. The state felt like a frequency he chose, and reality tuned itself to match it. Just like a radio picks up stations based on the frequency selected, life picked up experiences based on the state he assumed. He didn't have to fight the external world. He only had to shift internally. Feeling it real, Neville would say, was the ultimate act of selection. Choose the state, and the world responds. It can't resist. He began using this understanding in relationships. Instead of trying to change people, he changed the state from which he interacted. Suddenly, conversations flowed, conflicts softened, and he felt genuinely connected. When he lived from the state of being valued, others naturally treated him that way. The world only obeys what you are being, not what you are trying to force. He realized that the strongest evidence of a chosen state is not what happens outside, but how he feels inside. If he felt steady, secure, calm, the state was solid. If he felt frantic or doubtful, he knew he hadn't accepted the new state fully. This inner awareness became his compass. Shift your state. Manifestation follows, always in that order. Over time, he stopped asking, when will it happen, and began asking, who am I being right now? This subtle shift changed everything. He no longer chased results. He embodied the version of himself who naturally experienced them. And once he did, the world rearranged itself with astonishing loyalty, which led him naturally to the next realization. If the state is the true cause, then actions without the right state can never create anything new. He spent years believing that if he just worked harder, life would finally reward him. But all that effort only made him feel exhausted, not transformed. Neville Goddard taught him a truth most people never realize. Action is just the shadow of the state. If the inner state doesn't change, the outer world stays exactly the same. It's the same script, just with different actors. He remembered watching someone hop from job to job, thinking a new environment would fix everything. But everywhere she went, she carried the same assumptions. They won't value me. I'm overlooked, I'm not enough. So each new place treated her the same way, as if they were reading her inner script. It was the law of assumption explained in real life, unfolding right in front of him. Without a new state, action simply repeats old patterns. He noticed he did the same in relationships. Changing partners didn't help, because he kept bringing the state of "I'm not chosen" into every connection, and each person reflected that belief with precision. Neville's teaching began echoing louder. Imagination creates reality, not movement rooted in insecurity. The world obeys your state, Neville said, not the effort you push from fear. He tried hustling, forcing results, scheduling every minute to prove his worth. But the more he acted from lack, the more lack showed up. It was like planting seeds while doubting they'd grow. The vibration contradicted the intention. When he finally shifted his state to calm certainty, things moved effortlessly. He finally understood that the state creates long before action ever enters the picture. There was a moment when he decided to test this directly. Instead of trying to impress others, he simply assumed the state of being enough. No dramatic gestures, no external changes, just a quiet, inner choice. To his surprise, people responded differently, without him saying a word. Feeling it real Neville style proved more impactful than any action he had taken before. He realized that people confuse movement with progress. They run, hustle, push, but emotionally remain in the same place. Neville Goddard warned about this illusion. Action from the old state cannot create a new outcome. It just dresses the past in new costumes. To shift your state is to shift the entire foundation of manifestation. One day he asked himself a simple question. Why am I doing this action? If the answer came from fear, he stopped. If it came from inner security, he continued. This filter changed everything, because he finally aligned action with identity. Live in the end, Neville's message, became his new guiding rule. He also noticed how society pushes people to act first and think later, but Neville flipped the order entirely. Assume the state first, then act naturally from it. This made action organic instead of desperate. He no longer chased results, he embodied them, and the world mirrored his embodiment with surprising accuracy. He started telling friends, the action is not the cause, you are. Some resisted at first, but then noticed how their usual efforts led them in circles. Only when they changed who they were being did life finally move forward. It wasn't about doing more, it was about doing from a different inner place. Shift the state, and even the smallest action becomes powerful. Now he sees action as the final step, not the first. A natural expression of the state he already inhabits. And with this clarity, he prepares to explore something deeper. If action isn't the cause, then what reveals the state you're truly living from? And that leads directly into the next topic, reactions. He used to think reactions were just normal human responses, unpredictable and automatic. But Neville Goddard taught him that reactions are the clearest mirrors of the state he's living from. Not the words he says, not the affirmations he repeats, but the way he feels when something unexpected happens. That emotional reflex reveals the true assumption underneath. And once he saw this, he could no longer pretend his state was something else. There was a time when a simple message left unanswered would send him spiraling, not because of the message itself, but because he was in a state of feeling ignored. The world obeys your state, Neville would say, and reactions expose that state instantly. No acting, no pretending. The truth shows up in the first emotional impulse. It was humbling but liberating. He remembered catching himself reacting with anxiety whenever money came up. It wasn't the bill or the situation, it was the state of scarcity speaking through him. Imagination creates reality, and his imagination had been rehearsing fear for years. When he finally shifted his state, his reactions softened naturally. That's when he knew the inner shift was real. He began observing his emotional responses like a scientist. Annoyance meant he was in a state of pressure. Relief meant he was in a state of trust. Gratitude meant he was aligned with abundance. Every reaction became a clue pointing to the state that was creating his world. Sometimes he would test this consciously. He'd imagine the wish-fulfilled Neville method, feeling secure, chosen, abundant. before facing a challenging day. Then something unexpected would happen, and he'd notice how differently he reacted. The calm wasn't forced. It emerged from the new state. Shift your state. Manifestation follows. It always did. He realized that reactions don't need to be controlled. They need to be understood, because the moment he identified the state behind the reaction, he could choose a different one. Changing the state automatically changed the reaction. Feeling it real Neville style became his quiet way of issuing new commands to reality. One of his biggest breakthroughs came during an argument. Halfway through, he noticed he wasn't upset. Not because the situation changed, but because he had. He was reacting from stability, not insecurity. It was the first time he saw the state create emotional immunity. The world's noise couldn't shake him anymore. He also noticed how people around him reacted differently based on his state. When he was calm, they softened. When he was tense, they mirrored that tension. It was like he was tuning the emotional energy of the entire room. The world only obeys the frequency he emitted. Reactions became his internal GPS. If something triggered him, he didn't judge himself. He simply corrected the state. This is not who I choose to be. This gentle redirection changed his days quietly, but powerfully. He started living more intentionally, more consciously, more aligned. And now that he understood reactions as windows into the state, a new question emerged. If reactions reveal the state, then how does someone deliberately choose a new one? This insight leads directly into the next topic, selecting the state you desire with intention. He learned that shifting a state didn't require dramatic scenes or complex visualizations. Neville Goddard taught that a single, simple moment, felt as real, could rewrite an entire identity. So he stopped trying to imagine entire futures and focused on tiny proofs of the state he desired. A hand being held, a message received, a bill paid with ease, small scenes that implied big transformations. At first it felt almost too easy. Could imagining a brief moment really shift an entire reality? But every time he committed to the process, he felt something inside rearrange. It was the wish-fulfilled Neville method at work. Feel the moment, accept it, become it, and he noticed the world quietly adjusting in response. When he wanted to embody abundance, he didn't visualize millions. He imagined the feeling of checking his account and smiling, or the sensation of buying something without hesitation. That tiny scene made him feel, I am financially free now. Imagination creates reality, and that feeling was enough to ignite the new state. When he wanted to feel loved, he didn't picture an entire relationship. He imagined hearing someone say, I love how safe I feel with you, or the warmth of a hug that made time slow down. That single moment shifted him into the state of being cherished. And soon, people in his life started treating him differently. He loved practicing this in quiet places, in the shower, before sleep, or during a walk. Those were moments when his mind was most receptive and relaxed. Neville called this feeling it real, and he discovered its power quickly. The more he did it, the more natural it felt. Shift your state, manifestation follows, every time. He realized he didn't need to force emotion. The scene itself was enough to gently produce the feeling. Like imagining a warm memory brings warmth without effort. That organic emotion was the signal to the subconscious. It told reality, this is who I am now. Sometimes he doubted whether he was doing it correctly. But he remembered Neville's words. It's not about vivid images, it's about inner acceptance. Even a blurry scene works if the feeling lands. That took the pressure off and made the practice enjoyable. The world obeys your state, Neville would say, not your artistic skills. He began choosing scenes for each area of life. For confidence, he imagined someone saying, you handled that so well. For success, he imagined a friend congratulating him. For peace, he imagined waking up already calm. Each tiny moment became a doorway into a new state. Over time, the scenes weren't just imaginations, they became familiar realities. He recognized them in conversations, opportunities, and unexpected blessings. It was as if the world was replaying what he had already lived internally. Live in the end, Neville taught, and the world rearranges itself in perfect obedience. And now that he understood how to choose the state, he wondered, what activates it fully? This leads naturally into the next topic, the power of feeling to breathe life into the chosen state. He used to think he needed to feel excited or overwhelming joy for manifestation to work. But Neville Goddard revealed a subtler truth. The real indicator is quiet certainty, a feeling so simple and natural that most people overlook it. It's the inner sigh of relief, the moment you stop wanting because you already have. That's when imagination creates reality with precision. He tested this many times. Whenever he forced emotion, nothing happened. But when he relaxed into the feeling of, "it is done," life responded quickly. The world obeys your state, Neville would insist, not exaggerated emotion, just the calm inner knowing that the wish fulfilled is already true. One night he lay in bed imagining a better chapter in his life. He didn't visualize fireworks or dramatic outcomes. He simply tapped into that soft feeling of being supported and secure, and that single feeling shifted his entire state. By morning, unexpected solutions had already begun unfolding. He noticed that gratitude was one of the strongest gateways. Not gratitude for what he hoped would come, but gratitude as if it had already arrived. Neville called this feeling it real, and he learned to use it like a key. He'd whisper thank you with a sense of quiet certainty. And soon the world began mirroring that gratitude back. Relief was another powerful signal. When he felt relieved, he knew he had dropped the old state. It no longer felt like something he was chasing. It felt like something he had already received. That emotional exhale told him he had shifted into a new identity. Calm certainty might have been the most transformative feeling of all. It didn't shout, it settled, it didn't push, it accepted. It felt like the internal version of course this is mine. That's when the state creates effortlessly, because he stopped contradicting it with doubt. Sometimes he'd catch himself feeling anxious about whether things were working, but Neville taught that anxiety is simply the old state lingering. So instead of fighting it, he'd gently shift back into gratitude or relief. He'd choose the feeling of the version of himself who already had the desire. Shift your state, manifestation follows. Every single time. He experimented with this during stressful moments. If something went wrong, instead of panicking, he'd breathe into the feeling of, "I am safe." That feeling flipped the entire situation. People responded differently, solutions appeared, and tension dissolved. Goddard proved that feeling wasn't just internal, it commanded reality. He noticed this especially with money. Whenever he felt desperate, bills piled up. But when he felt calm and provided for, unexpected income appeared. Feeling it real Neville style wasn't spiritual fluff, it was a practical tool. The feeling became the cause and life adjusted to match it. As he mastered this, he began recognizing the early signs that the new state had taken root. Moments of ease, synchronicities, and a shift in how people treated him. These signs whispered, "You've crossed the threshold," and they pointed naturally to the next understanding, what to look for when the new state begins to bloom. He used to panic whenever reality contradicted what he was imagining. If money didn't show up, if someone didn't respond, if things looked worse before better, he thought he had failed. But Neville Goddard taught a truth that changed everything. Physical reality is delayed. What he sees today is the echo of yesterday's state, not the proof of what's coming. Appearances are just old assumptions dissolving. There was a time when he shifted into a state of abundance and immediately received an unexpected bill. Old him would have spiraled into fear, but now he knew. The world obeys your state, Neville said, but it takes a moment for the old pattern to fade. So he stayed calm and held the feeling of being provided for. Days later, a solution arrived effortlessly, just as his new state had implied. He began treating negative appearances like weather. A storm passing through didn't mean sunshine wasn't on the way. It simply meant yesterday's atmosphere was clearing itself out. Neville called these moments bridge of incidents, events that seemed contradictory but actually lead toward the fulfillment. Imagination creates reality, even through scenes that don't look like progress. Sometimes life would show him situations that looked completely opposite to what he desired. A breakup right before meeting the right person, a job loss before a better opportunity. These weren't failures, they were old states collapsing. Shift your state, manifestation follows, but the old state often crumbles loudly on its way out. He noticed this, especially with self-worth. When he shifted into the state of being valued, some people suddenly fell away. It wasn't rejection, it was misalignment. They belonged to the version of him who didn't see his own worth. Now, life was making space for new reflections of the identity he had assumed. He learned not to argue with appearances. Arguing meant reinforcing them as truth. Instead, he would quietly return to the feeling of the wish fulfilled Neville spoke about. He'd say to himself, "This is just old data. My new state is already forming." And with that, resistance melted. He thought of it like steering a ship. When you turn the wheel, the boat doesn't instantly face the new direction. There's momentum, delay, shifting currents. The same happens when you shift states. The physical world adjusts gradually, but the direction is already set the moment the feeling changes. This understanding made him calmer than he'd ever been. He stopped reacting to every circumstance as if it were permanent. He saw everything as fluid, shifting, rearranging in response to the new inner assumption. Even setbacks became signs that the old pattern was breaking apart. Feeling it real Neville style helped him trust the process. He also realized that appearances test commitment, not potential. If he could remain faithful to the new state even when the world looked unchanged, he was proving dominance over circumstance. Neville called this persistence in the assumption, not stubbornness, mastery. And the moment he persisted, the old imagery faded like morning fog. Now he knows that contradictions don't mean it isn't working. They mean it is working, because the old reality always makes one last appearance before disappearing for good. And as he recognized these signs, he naturally began noticing the first gentle hints that the new state was taking root. He began noticing something subtle the more he lived in his chosen state. Life didn't explode with dramatic miracles at first. Something much gentler happened. Things started feeling easier, as if invisible weight had been lifted from his path. Neville Goddard taught that these early signs mean the new state is already active. The world obeys your state, Neville said, long before the physical evidence appears. He'd wake up one morning and feel strangely lighter. No reason, no explanation, just a quiet sense that things were moving in his favor. This unexpected ease was the first whisper of manifestation. Shift your state, manifestation follows. This was the emotional version of that truth. Imagination creates reality long before the senses catch up. Then came the synchronicities. Repeated numbers, seeing someone he'd been thinking about, or stumbling across the exact message he needed. It was as if reality began winking at him, saying, "You're aligned now." Neville called these bridges of incidents, the natural unfolding of the wish fulfilled. These coincidences weren't random. They were echoes of the new state forming. One of the clearest signs came from people. Someone would compliment him in a way that matched his new identity, or treat him with a level of respect he hadn't experienced before. It felt like the world was speaking the language of the state he had assumed. Feeling it real Neville style was changing how others perceived him. Sometimes opportunities appeared without him seeking them, a message from someone he hadn't spoken to in years, offering help or connection, a chance to solve something effortlessly that used to feel impossible. These moments showed that the state creates the path, not the mind's effort. The law of assumption explained itself through these gentle openings. He noticed the shift in how conversations flowed. People listened differently, reacted differently, and responded as if he had taken on a new role. He didn't announce anything. He simply embodied the state, and the world mirrored that embodiment without hesitation. It felt like living in the end, exactly as Neville taught. There were also inner signs, the absence of old fear. What used to trigger anxiety now felt neutral or irrelevant. This emotional freedom was one of the strongest confirmations. It meant he was no longer reacting from the old state. The state creates internally first, then externally. Sometimes he'd feel an overwhelming sense of calm for no logical reason, no evidence, no guarantee, just calm certainty. That feeling was the deepest proof that he had stepped into the new identity. Neville said that the feeling is the secret, and now he understood why. Feeling it real was the signature of transformation. There were also moments when things aligned too perfectly to ignore. A problem solved itself. A delay turned into a blessing. A disappointment redirected him to something better. These experiences were the world adjusting itself to the new state he had claimed. He began trusting these signs more than the old physical world, because the signs were small, but they were precise. They showed he was already crossing into the new reality. And as these early indications grew stronger, he naturally stepped into a deeper truth. The moment you stop looking for confirmation outside, you fully embody the state. He reached a point where he stopped checking the physical world every 5 minutes. No more looking for signs, no more searching for proof, no more asking, is it working yet? Neville Goddard taught that true mastery begins when someone trusts their inner state more than appearances. That's when imagination creates reality with power and precision. The world obeys your state, Neville said, not your doubts. There was a time when he constantly monitored results. He'd imagine abundance at night and panic the next morning when nothing changed. That panic was proof he didn't trust the state yet. Deep embodiment began the day he stopped needing immediate evidence. He chose to feel the wish fulfilled regardless of what the senses reported. He realized something profound. The senses are the last to know. The inner shift always happens first, quietly, subtly, deeply. And when he trusted that inner shift, the outer world eventually followed. This was the law of assumption, explained in its purest form. Reality became the follower, not the leader. One morning he woke up with a strange calmness, the kind that doesn't need reassurance. He didn't care whether something had manifested yet. He knew who he was being, and that was enough. This was deep embodiment, choosing identity over evidence. Feeling it real Neville style had become his new baseline. He noticed that when he stopped seeking confirmation, life actually moved faster. Opportunities showed up organically, without him chasing or forcing. People responded to him as if he had already stepped into the new version of himself. It was the state creates principle unfolding naturally. Trust replaced effort, and results flowed with ease. He compared it to planting a seed. Once it goes into the soil, staring at the dirt won't make it sprout faster. He had to trust the unseen growth happening beneath the surface. The same was true with states. The transformation happened internally first. Shift your state, manifestation follows. But patience reveals the maturity of belief. Sometimes he'd catch old fears trying to pull him back, but instead of panicking, he'd gently return to the feeling of certainty. He'd remind himself that doubts were just echoes of the old self. They had no authority over the new state unless he fed them. The state creates consistency when you refuse to wobble. He discovered that deep embodiment felt natural, not forced. It wasn't pretending or acting as if. It was choosing identity with quiet conviction, choosing to live in the end, as Neville taught, until it became the only reality he recognized. The external world was just catching up. This shift transformed his relationship with time. He was no longer rushing, waiting, or worrying. He trusted the state to unfold in perfect order, with perfect timing. He stopped searching for signs and became the sign himself. That's when the world rearranged effortlessly around him. And as he embodied this fully, a final clarity emerged. If the state determines everything, then the next step is inevitable. Choosing states intentionally, knowing the world will obey every inner decision. He finally understood the simplicity behind Neville Goddard's teachings. Everything begins inside, not with action, not with timing, not with external strategy, but with the state he chooses to occupy. Imagination creates reality because it determines who he is being in each moment, and the world only echoes that identity back to him. The state creates, and the world obeys with flawless precision. He realized his inner world had been choosing for him long before he consciously made decisions. Old assumptions about money, love, success, they had shaped everything. Not because life was unfair, but because the world obeys your state, Neville explained. Once he changed those assumptions, life changed naturally. It wasn't luck, it was alignment. Choosing a new state became his most powerful tool. He began treating states like emotional attire, selecting what he wanted to wear each day. Confidence, abundance, love, peace. Each one carried its own energy. Shift your state. Manifestation follows. He had seen this unfold countless times. The law of assumption explained itself through every transformation he experienced. He practiced waking up and choosing his identity before stepping out of bed, not asking, "What will the world give me today?" but declaring, "Who am I being today?" That one question changed the tone of his entire day. The world simply mirrored back the state he carried into it. He started noticing how quickly things changed when his state was firm. People reacted differently. Conversations flowed. Opportunities appeared. It wasn't because he forced anything. It was because his reality had no choice. Neville Goddard taught that the state is the cause, and the world the effect. Once the cause changes, the effect must follow. He loved using simple practices to reinforce his chosen state. Small scenes of the wish-fulfilled Neville style helped anchor the feeling. A moment of gratitude sealed it. A deep breath confirmed it. Feeling it real was the bridge between identity and manifestation. He discovered that intention didn't need to be loud. It didn't need dramatic affirmations or rituals. It only needed consistency, a steady decision of who he is now. When he held that state, reality bent to match it. The world obeyed with the same loyalty it once reflected his fears. He also learned that choosing a state wasn't about becoming someone new. It was about remembering who he had always been beneath old assumptions. A creator, not a victim. A director of consciousness, not a passive observer. The law of assumption explained this role beautifully. He was always in command. With this awareness, he no longer felt intimidated by circumstances. He knew they were fluid, malleable, obedient. They rearranged themselves the moment his state shifted. Everything external became negotiable. Everything internal became decisive. The state creates without exception, and as he mastered this truth, a deeper curiosity awakened inside him, not about what the world would do next, but about what new states he could choose, knowing reality would always reflect them faithfully. Now that you understand how the state creates and the world only obeys, the question becomes deeply personal. What state will you live from when this video ends? Not tomorrow, not next week, right now, in this moment where your inner choice is already reshaping the outer world. Think about the patterns you've been repeating. Were they truly bad luck, or were they reflections of an old state you didn't know you were choosing? What would shift if you stopped reacting to circumstances and started selecting your inner reality with intention? Remember, you're not waiting for the world to change. The world is waiting for you to assume a new state so it can finally follow. So ask yourself honestly, what version of you feels natural now? What identity are you ready to stop postponing? What feeling would you choose if you believed, truly believed, that life always mirrors you? If this video opened your eyes, your heart, or your awareness, if it made you rethink the way you've been creating your life, then don't let this be just another moment of insight that fades away. Take a breath, choose your state, and let the world rearrange itself in obedience to the version of you you're finally willing to become. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss the teachings that will help you continue shifting, expanding, and consciously creating your reality. Your transformation begins now, and I'm here to walk with you every step of the way.